So this is going to be one of the first videos that I try and do full on editing for. So I'm going to do cuts, I'm going to do transitions. Not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but I'm going to put more in. I think I'm going to try and see how aggressive and obnoxious it can be and still be mildly entertaining. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell a story. Well, I guess a story in the sense that I'm just going to try and say something entertaining, and then I'm going to chop it up, and I'm going to see if it still tracks, even if it's not completely coherent, like it's a linear story. So what's going to happen is I'm going to leave it on a cliffhanger and not say what the name is. I want to see what everybody thinks I'm talking about. So I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna do my weird transitions, and it's just gonna be jumbled. This is more than likely gonna be at the end, but it's just gonna be jumbled, and then you're gonna have to try and figure out what I'm talking about, and I'll let people know if people respond. I'll let people know if anyone's right about what I'm talking about. I guess you can call it. Like there are steps that you can graduate through. I was like, okay, again, this is very interesting. The way that they portrayed it, the way that they kind of bring you into the world is different. And obviously, with a lot of these things, they're trying to shoot them in a semi, an Earth very similar to yours, but not kind of way. And it was interesting. I mean, it was it started off, I'll be honest, kind of slow. It developed relatively quickly, and then as it progressed, it became a lot less focused on the specifics of the initial pitch. So, hey, here's a fantastical world. Here are fantastical people within this world and concepts, and like come on this journey with us. You'll see what it'll look like. It's going to stay fairly consistent, but it's going to be a lot of aggressive, I guess, propel the story forward, or if it'll take anything away. I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm going to try that. Like jump cuts, and you're going to know it's not going to be seamless. The point is, I want to see how editing it together is going to. I remember watching, thinking in the beginning, okay, this is an interesting way, it's an interesting take on it. Not that I don't say I've never seen it before, but like not that it's never happened before. Obviously, a lot of stories are just kind of recycled, sort of piecemealing together of other stories. But it was an interesting take on it. Okay, so I'm watching, just kind of there, and then I'm going to chop it up, and then I'm going to decide how I'm going to jump between sections, and then I'm going to see if that'll work. There's going to this isn't an endorsement of the story. This isn't me telling you go out and watch it. I guess it's more just me trying if I can change how the story comes across. If that makes sense, you'll see what I mean as I continue. Okay, so I'm going to try and do the story explanation without giving away the name to start, and I'm going to see if I can piece it together and if you can get an idea of what it is that I'm talking about based on the descriptions that I give of like the characters and the plot lines. But I'm going to jump it around as much as possible, but I'm going to try and be vague. The point is, it's kind of like see how far you can get in the video before you guess the story. And if that formula works, I guess what I'll do is I'll try and do something to that effect fairly regularly. I feel like it might be entertaining depending on how I edit it, because I've seen a lot of movies that do that sort of jump cut, jumping around. You start at a person walks into a bar, they're disheveled and covered in dirt, and they're limping, and you're like, oh my, what happened? And the person sits down at the bar, and they're like, I'll take one drink, bartender. And then it cuts to 6 hours earlier, and then that's the person in a clean outfit, and let's see how the story got there. So I'm going to try and do a version of that without the visuals, because for some reason I think that's a good idea right now. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm gonna tell a story that wasn't told in that format, right? And I'm going to edit it up, and then I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to see if someone can guess by the. Which, I mean, let's just be honest. If somebody just watches through the whole thing, they could potentially just put in the comments, "This is the thing that you're talking about." But I mean, I would hope that somebody's able to put, like, at this timestamp, I figured out it was, and then say it. My hope is that people watch, write down when they figured it out, then finish it, and then put it. They don't look for other people. If other people even comment, I'm hoping that the people comment. It would be nice. Okay, so story time. Story time. So I remember starting the series probably, oh God, what year is it? 2021. Okay, so it was several years ago now. Started the series. I remember thinking I liked watching the series specifically because it was something I could kind of turn my mind off and watch. You know what I mean? Like it was you could turn it on at any point because it was linear and kind of connected, but you could sort of pick it up as you watched it. It was linear. It was not super heavy when it came to plot and dialogue. To anyone who's seen the show, like once you figure out what it is, if you disagree with me, I mean that's fine. But it's not super heavy in the plot department. It's very like you could just binge it and miss a bunch of episodes and still get it by the end. But as I was growing up, like a lot of people do, you grow up with wizard stories and magic and Magic the Gathering cards and all of that. So you grow up with this concept of like fantasy and fantasy realms and people dealing with the idea of feeling ordinary and then becoming extraordinary. Okay. So I remember starting it thinking, okay, this is interesting. This is a take on a concept that I've seen when I was a kid. You're going to have, obviously the main characters, and we're going to become invested in this character, in their relationships, in their quest. There's going to be a call to action. Like there's going to be a lot that's going to happen in this series that's going to elevate it past just a simple, here are fantastical sort of magical things that happen. All right. So I'm watching. I remember when I first started, I thought, wow, this is, I don't want to say so different, but different enough from the way that things are normally portrayed in that realm of fantasy. Doing this without explaining the title is, and without giving, like if I give too many things away, people are potentially going to understand what I'm talking about fairly quickly. So I'm going to try and be vague. And then on this concept, this is going to be different. I remember watching it. I remember the whole concept of like, oh, it's people learning and there's a school and it kind of kept snowballing into this. There are levels, there are different types, and then it sort of devolved into just a generic, the love triangles that you have and whatnot. And I get that they do that a lot to like kind of ensnare people and get them invested in like, ooh, like he said, she said, like what's going to happen with this? And that, it can kind of tie people to a show. But by the end of the first season, you are definitely at a point where you're like, okay, I have to make a choice now. I either continue down this rabbit hole and I see where this is going, and I hope that the payoff is worth what I was put through going through the season, or you completely write it off and never speak about it to anybody because it's that kind of a show. And I've now decided, I remember thinking, I'm getting mildly invested in the characters. Like there's obviously some aspects of the characters, like with any show, where you're like, this character has moments where you're like, maybe I don't want to keep watching this. Like it's entertaining-ish, but it's not the most. Like it's if I keep watching, fine. Like I've invested time and it wasn't, I guess, a complete waste. But if I switch to something else like that, that wouldn't be terrible either. I do remember thinking when I first started it, thinking, "Wow, this is going to be like a cult classic," but like people are gonna be, "Ooh, this is like a new take